Hey guys, Tom is here again. That's me. Sound like I'm introducing somebody else. But no, on this video, I wanted to talk about just some things that if you're coming here to even to visit, but I mean, especially if you're coming here to live, you're going to want to know about. It's sort of like, I guess I could probably almost call it differences, right, between, the Philippines and the West, and especially the U.S. I don't really want to speak for other Western countries, like whatever, England or Australia or Canada, because I'm from the U.S. So just I kind of took some notes, obviously, because there's several things I wanted to touch on in this video, which is why I'm wearing these bad boys, these cheaters, $10 cheaters. They're kind of good though. They're lightweight, and you could bend them so they don't fall down that much off your head. Anyway, I got them in the States. They even have a plastic case for them, like for I guess for travel or whatever. But anyway, um, I think they're 1.5s, whatever. But let's talk first about tipping in the Philippines, right? I will say this, right? Like, I mean, as a Westerner, I do tip. You know what I mean? Of course. But you don't tip nearly as much as you would in, like, say, the United States, right? Like, just for example, restaurants, okay? I mean, a restaurant in the United States, you got a waitress and they're dependent on tips. You know what I mean? Because you know that they're making like $5 an hour or probably whatever the minimum wage is, $7 or whatever. And then so they kind of need your tips to live. Basically, right? So we usually tip 20%, right, in the U.S. I mean, as a rule, in the restaurants. Here in a restaurant, nowhere near that much. I mean, I almost like one time I told a friend of mine 10%, but then I thought about it and I'm like, that's not even true, I mean, it's not even necessarily 10%, you know? I mean, like whatever, you could have a bill if there's like a couple people or whatever eating, or 2 to 4 people or whatever, and maybe you'll have a bill that's 4,000 pesos, or right, $80 approximately, which actually less now. It'd probably be more like 72 or whatever dollars now. And so you would think, oh, 10% would be like $7, or right, 300 peso or 350 peso or something. No, not necessarily. I mean, you can literally just leave like you know a couple hundred pesos, or maybe even 100 pesos, 150 pesos, and they're gonna be all right with it. I mean, nobody's gonna give you any grief, because they don't necessarily expect tips. You know what I mean? It's just not part of the culture here. Like the locals tip very lightly. Let's put it that way. So anyway, so that's one thing. Now with cabs, okay, or Grabs even. Now I know Grabs are like Uber in the U.S. Okay, Grabs here are like Uber and Lyft in the U.S. But you could pay cash here. That's the difference. You don't have to have a credit account with them and all that, where you just pay through your credit card and then there's no cash at all unless you want to leave a tip. No, here you pay cash. You can pay that way with credit, or I imagine Gcash or Grab Cash. I think they have a Grab Pay, right? You can do that, but a lot of foreigners probably don't. They just pay cash like they would with a taxi, regular taxi. And so with Grab, yeah, I do tend to tip like 10% or whatever. You know what I mean? Not always, but I mean, pretty close to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's like okay, if it's 550 peso the ride, I'll probably give them 600. You know what I mean? And believe me, the drivers are happy to have it. They're not looking for 20% or whatever. They're not even looking for 10%. They just, if you give them anything, they're pretty happy with it. And keep in mind with Grab, they're not getting all that money, whatever the money is. They've got to give the company, I don't know what it is. It's 30%, maybe it's 35%, maybe it's 25%. somewhere in there, they got to give, Grab, you know. So they don't, and they're using their own cars usually, right? So just keep that in mind. And it's usually a nice ride too. You know what I mean? The air cons, it's a newer vehicle and stuff like that, right? They're nicer, a little more convenient, sometimes quicker, to get a Grab sometimes than a taxi, depending on where you're at. And I'm in Manila. But I mean, depending on what specific location you're at. Sometimes it's not easy though. Like down the other day, we were at the Fort Santiago, and when we left, and this was like around, God, I don't know, 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. on a Wednesday, which is traffic time, and we could not get a Grab. I mean, I put it in and waited, and then they said, okay, try again. Or I tried like for 10 minutes and I couldn't get anybody. Probably because they saw it was a long trip and there was a lot of traffic. And after so we wound up just taking a taxi for about the same amount that the Grab would have cost, even though I could have, I negotiate them down a little bit, so it would have been 100 pesos less. But at the when the trip was over, after seeing all the traffic and crap he had to deal with, you know what I mean? Like seriously, I mean it was like a 2 hour ride, man. It was like I think it was over 2 hours in traffic. And I was like, hey, I just gave him the 1,000. I said, no, keep it, man. I didn't say, oh, you got 100. Because we agreed on a flat rate. You know what I mean? Like he just said, I'll do it for. He said 1,000. I said 800. He said, I'll do it for 9. I said, all right. It's less than Grab. Grab was would have been 1,000. With the tip, it was like 960. I would have given him 1,000. You know what I mean? So this was less. But like I said, and I knew, and only do the flat rate with the taxi if you know what the rate's going to be. You know what I'm saying? And when you have Grab to sort of check as your, the altimeter, like, hey, Grab is this much, and they're always a little bit more than a taxi usually, but then you know from here to here it's going to be, I knew it was going to be 900 to 1,000. You know what I mean? So that but if you're new to this country, just try and have them run the meter only. Don't, because you're not going to know what a flat rate should be. You know what I mean? You just come here for the first time, you're not going to know nothing. So just tell them, please use the meter, sir. And if they refuse, just get out of the cab. Say, I'm sorry. Get another cab. Because seriously, you can do that. If they're sitting there and not driving anywhere yet, you just actually it's good to just talk to them through the window and say, hey, I'm going here, and then make sure that they go there, that they want to go there, and then sort of tell them, please use the meter or whatever, sir. But they usually do. You know what I mean? I mean, this guy knew there was traffic and everything, and he was going home. I think this was the last ride. He actually lived not too far from this area where we live. So I think this is probably his last trip of the day. But yeah, I mean, these guys put up with a lot of crap, man. I mean, traffic can be really horrendous here. Seriously. I mean, it was like a 2 hour, what should have been like with no traffic, it would have been like less than an hour. You know what I mean? Like with no traffic, or maybe an hour, and then it's like over 2 hours. I think it was almost like 2 hours and 15 minutes or something. So, but the bottom line is, yeah, try, you could do like 10% or whatever. You give them a tip. I mean, what the heck? I mean, and if they ever see you again, man, they'll remember you. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of good, good faith, good karma. For the future. But anyway, but those are the things. Now, concerning restaurants or related to restaurants, for delivery here, right? If we want to just order delivery, we use Food Panda, which is pretty good. We actually used it in Bacolod too when we were there. And you could pay cash with Food Panda also. You don't have to have, credit or whatever, a credit card on their account. But what I did notice is initially there was PayPal. Like PayPal would come up automatically. And then I noticed recently, like very recently, that it didn't come up as an option. So But even over 1,000 peso bill, they still allowed me to pay cash, COD. You know, so that was now maybe if you go in there and you set up your payment options like in your portal of your online account with them or whatever, you if you put PayPal in there, you know what I mean, like manually put it in there, then maybe it'll come up. But for some reason, I didn't do that initially, and it just came up, you know, and I used them a couple times, you know, PayPal, you know. But anyway, that's just a little related thing about, you know, with the food, since we're on the food subject. And I will tell you, I'm going to hit all the food stuff while I'm on this subject. There's about 5 things I could talk about with food. If you're on, you know, if you're trying to watch your diet and watch your weight, you do have to be careful here, especially with restaurants, right? Like if you go to restaurants, the drinks sometimes will have a lot of sugar. You know what I mean? Like you'll get iced tea or something even. And where in the States, they won't put sugar in it unless you tell them, you know, just put it on the side or whatever. But here, it's like pre-mixed, you know, and you'll get it, and it's pretty, you know, it tends to be sweet. And and you know what, with regular sugar, I'd rather have regular sugar than that fake sugar, okay? Because that fake sugar, I don't care what anybody says, I don't care, oh, stevia, this and that, all that crap has like side effects. Like every one of them has some kind of a side effect, and a lot of times it concerns your blood sugar levels, you know, which is what you're trying to avoid, right? You know, like, hey, I'm using this because I don't want to raise my blood sugar level, but it's got some kind of adverse effect on it. So I just don't like any of that crap. Guess what? Just give me a little bit of sugar, you know, preferably brown sugar, you know, just a little bit, or let me control it, you know, and then I'm happy, you know. Or maybe I don't want sugar at all, you know. And if you, I guess if you tell them like, hey, can I get with no sugar, you know, you might be able to do it. Maybe not all the time, but in some cases you'll be able to do that, you know. And certainly in your own home, you know, if you're making these things, you know, for yourself, obviously you can control the sugar and salt content. And that leads me to salt, which is another area where, you know, food tends to be salty here. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they tend to sort of cook it with salt. You know what I mean? They don't use no salt and then you could just salt your own food or whatever. It tends to be. So keep that in mind. Like, you don't want to necessarily eat out a lot. You know what I mean? We eat out maybe twice a week. You know, maybe, you know, once to twice a week, depending, you know, uh, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not all, you know, sometimes maybe it's Jollibee, maybe it's pizza, maybe it's, you know, actually the New York style pizza, which is the pizza that you can get at SNR, which is like the Costco in the Philippines. That pizza's pretty good, man. You know, like, I mean, you know, none of it's going to compare to Chicago pizza. I'm from Chicago, right? But I mean, you know, you got to make allowances. You got to look what you got available to you, and it's all franchises. You know what I mean? Pizza Hut, Greenwich, Shakey's, you know, New York style. Then you got like Papa John's is coming here, I think, which is pretty good. Uh, Domino's they have here, Pizza Hut. You know, Pizza Hut's good actually. That's another one that it's pretty good. You know, but like I said, you know, you don't want to eat that every day. I mean, you know, if you're trying to watch your, you know, your health and your weight or whatever, you don't want to eat that stuff every day. Um, and what else is there? Now, I'll say this, just probably the last point about foods, uh, or one of the last points. When you're eating meat here, be careful. And I mean, even if you're not maybe not even as much in the restaurant, but you should always be cognizant of it. But even at home, when you buy food at the market or the grocery store, like meat, I'm talking about, when you're eating it, be careful, man, because there's bones. There's a lot of little bones, you know, in the meat. And so you just have to be cognizant of that. You don't want to choke on that. You know what I mean? Like, don't be afraid to like, hey, spit it out. You know, even if you're in a restaurant, you know, it's not a nobody's gonna look at you or you know laugh at you because they're all doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like everybody's doing the same thing. You know, nobody wants to bite on bones or swallow little bones. You know, So just be aware of that because it's a lot more prevalent here. You're going to find that situation a lot more here than you will, in the U.S. And and the beef here is not as good. I mean, it just isn't. You can get like Australian hamburger patties, those frozen patties at the S&R, which are decent if you don't overcook them. They're pretty good. Um, which is the case with all meat, right? Yeah. But anyway, but I had like some just today actually. I had some like it looked like a T-bone steak, like from Australia or something, but it was really beef. And there's a big difference. It's like beef with T-bone or whatever, not like steak. And it was okay, but it's nothing like the U.S. Don't expect the beef here to be. I mean, in some restaurants, it's good. Don't get me wrong. Like you can get beef calderetta or kari kari, right? Like in Kuya J, Jerry's, Max's, and it's good. It's tender. It's like the U.S. It's like freaking pot roast. You know what I mean? Like it's good. But when you go in the store, to look for like beef to cook at home or whatever, it's just going to be kind of tough. You know what I mean? It's going to be not as good. And the steak, if you wanted real steak, like, and that would be from Australia too. It's very expensive. I mean, even at S&R, the premium steaks, the actual steaks, you know what I mean? Like way expensive. I mean, it'd be like going to Morton Steakhouse or something. You know what I mean? Like in Chicago or whatever. Like it's like $60 or for you know what I mean? Like I'm not exaggerating. So just yeah, don't if you're like a total beef lover or something like that. I don't know. You might want to rethink your move. Yeah, you know. However, there's plenty of chicken here, plenty of pork here, plenty of seafood here, like big time seafood. Um, what's the other one I'm thinking of? There's another, I don't know. I mean, there is, and there is burgers, right? Like even at Jollibee and that, you can get a burger and they're not bad. They're pretty good. I mean, you can't really tell, like that maybe it's not 100% beef or whatever, but it's pretty good. But in the stores, it's just you're not going to be able to find the kind of beef that you're used to getting in the U.S. Okay, that's all I'll say. So, oh, and then the other thing would be like rice. Rice is huge here, man. I mean, the phrase "rice is life," man. That is accurate as to how Filipinos think about rice. I mean, they just like many of them will eat it every meal. Personally, I like garlic rice, but I really, at least at this point, I don't want to eat it more than once a day. Like just one serving a day, 1 cup a day, or whatever. That's it. I don't want it at every meal or whatever. So anyway, but that's definitely a thing. They're gonna if you have a girlfriend here or wife or whatever, they're gonna want you to eat it. Like they're gonna, hey, have every meal. You have to kind of tell them, no, thank you. Just once a day or maybe not at all. I don't know. It's up to you. Like I guess if you don't want it at all, like I said, at least with garlic, it's sort of good for you. The garlic is. All right, now my next subject is actually some of these things that I wrote down. There's like 13 things, or whatever, 14 things, but they're really only about 3 or 4 different categories. It's just like 4 parts of the same category. But like customer service here, like don't number one, don't ever lose your temper here, man. It's just not totally. It's not good. Like if like you in the States, you know what I mean? People are used to spouting off sometimes when they're not happy in the store or somebody, oh, they're out of it. And sometimes you yell employees, and it's not even their fault at all, you know, in the U.S. Well, here, don't even think about doing that crap. You know what I mean? Because it won't, it probably won't end well. You know what I mean? It's not gonna be, they don't like that shit at all here. You know, and I don't blame them. You know, like, but that's part of their culture here. Like, you don't embarrass people like loudly in public in front of other people. You don't do that shit here. You know, so just get that in your head. You know, um, you know. So if you're one of those whiners, or always pissing and moaning about something, or if you do that when you drive, if you're one of those road rage guys, like in the U.S., cuts people off and yells and gives a finger and all that. Boy, just try and come here with that shit here. Like, yeah, I'll visit you in the hospital. Maybe. If you're lucky. I don't mean to be like it's whatever, like to scare you or whatever, but I just don't do that. It's just not. I don't think it's acceptable in the U.S. How's that? I think it's a fucking worst part of our, excuse my French, but it's the worst part of our society. It really is. And it's happened. I noticed it get worse and worse. I mean, I had the kind of job where I drove a decent amount. I wasn't driving like 20,000, 30,000 miles or more a year, but I mean, I drove a pretty good amount, you know what I mean? And it was mostly with my work. So I experienced it, man. I had guys cutting me off on expressways, just for no reason. I mean, they're not just cutting me off. I'm watching them, and they're weaving in and out. They're just going 80 miles an hour, and you're going like 65, and they're going 80, 90, and you look like you're standing still, and they cut right in front of you, and then cut the next guy in front of you off, and they're just zigzagging in and out of the lanes, just, you know what I mean? I've seen guys like that. I'm always just like, I used to get really pissed off, and you're tempted on following them or whatever. But then I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just for, I mean, I'm older now, so it's like you start to use your head more, as an older guy, right? Than you do when you're like 30, or whatever, or 20 or 30 years old. But I used to be like, man, you'd really get pissed. But now I'm just like, number one, you don't know what the guy might have a gun, what I mean? There's so many shootings going on, like just random shootings or whatever, and especially even with road rage type things, incidents, So it's not like the old days, where the worst thing will happen, you'll get in a physical fight with somebody or something, on the shoulder of an expressway. No, nowadays you got to worry about getting shot, or whatever. And it's just not worth it. And the other thing is whenever I see guys drive like that, I'm just like, you know what? You'll get your karma, dude. You'll be wrapped around something pretty soon here. You know what I mean? If you keep driving like that, you know what I mean? Like that's whatever. You'll get your just desserts. Like that's not going to go unanswered. You know. So that's the way I look at it. Let somebody as what was the old saying? Let God sort them out. um, but anyway, but yeah, don't even. But I guess my point is don't do that stuff here. Like just that's embarrassing people or yelling at them and all that. And so and I would assume that that's more likely to happen if you're a big drinker. I'm guessing, right? Like come from another country here, and then you're one of those guys that drinks a lot. Well, what happens when you get drunk, right? You get loud, you get this, you get that. So just be very careful, man. Like you can't get away with some of the stuff that maybe you did in the U.S. Or maybe even where the worst thing that happened was you got in a fight or something, or got your ass kicked or something, or whatever. It could be worse than that here, plus if you're a foreigner, you get your ass kicked out of the country too, So if you really want to live here, you better behave, And set an example for God's sake, you know what I mean? Like there's other foreigners that, we see stuff like that. I mean, I don't think it happens a lot here at all, but it does happen. And usually when it happens, it's on Facebook, right? So everybody sees it. And then there's parts of this country where people don't see a lot of foreigners, right? But you know, they still have access to like phones and they get, you know, Facebook or whatever. It's not like they're, you know, have no technology, and they see that stuff and then they think, oh wow, you know, are all the foreigners like that or whatever? You know, it's just a natural like assumption, you know. So yeah, so just be, you know, it's good to be here, man. The people are nice here. There's no reason to lose your temper like that. And you know, there's bureaucracy, yeah, but you know what? You got to kind of know how to deal with it too. You know, you got to know how to, and sometimes you could even avoid it. You know, you could kind of logistically, you know, hey, why don't we? Maybe we'll go on this day, and it won't be such a long line or whatever. You know what I mean? For example, you know, you got to like plan things a little bit here. You know, and it'll benefit you. You know. So anyway, it's just little advice. Um, but I guess back to my customer service. I mean, you know, these are a lot of times you're dealing with in the stores and the department stores. They're just employees. You know, they're not managers. You know what I mean? They're not. So even if you did get mad at them, or if you're just even if you're not yelling, but you're kind of like thinking like, oh, how come this, you know, how come I'm not getting the service here, you know, whatever. Just keep in mind that you know they're not getting paid a lot of money, you know, and there's a lot of them, you know, there's a lot of employees that work in these places, you know, in these department stores and whatnot, you know, and it's just you know you're not going to be able to always get your like, oh God, let me speak with the manager, you know what I mean, like what you might do at the store back home, you know, at a Kohl's or something, you know, you don't always, you're not going to necessarily get that here, you know. You kind of have to know what you want, you know, and then you just sort of, they're going to assist you in actually purchasing it, but they're not going to be able to give you a million pieces of information on this pair of shoes or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind, you know. And and I will tell you this, if you ever hear, whenever you hear the term, like when you're checking out, ask a question about something, whether it's a hotel or whatever, some kind of store or restaurant or whatever, or any kind of other entity. If you hear the term, if they start the sentence with "upon checking, sir," it's probably not going to be good, you know. You know, it's probably going to lead to like, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, we don't do that," or no, you're not going to be able to get that. You're not going to be able to do this or that. You know, like whatever you're trying to do. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of a, you know, it's a nice preemptive way that they're going to tell you that I'm sorry, sir. You know, and I don't mean just like we're out of stock with something, but something else, like you know, whatever. It could be a hotel situation or whatever, right? For example, you know, and so just be mindful of that, you know. So if you hear that, it's likely going to be a negative response. You know what I mean? It's not going to be what you want to hear, maybe, you know, most of the time. Sometimes maybe it will. You know what I mean? Like it could be positive, right? Like, oh, upon checking, sir, we see that you did pay extra for whatever, you know, early check-in, you know, or something. You know, like it could be good or whatever, you know what I mean, or what you're expecting to hear, but maybe more times than not, it's not going to be, you know. So just be cognizant of that, you know. Also, before I get into sort of banking and stuff like that, um, oh, I did something on my last video about restaurants. You know, I left out Chow King. I like Chow King. We like Chow King. You know, it's a franchise here. And keep in mind, a lot of these franchises are owned by one guy, you know, one business. You know what I mean? Like they own like 3 or 4 different major franchises here. It's not just individual, you know, owners. You know what I mean? But yeah, but Chow King is good. And I think there was one other thing. I think I mentioned that Banshan chicken, I believe. Um, oh, you know what else? And they don't have them much here, right? There's a lot of stuff that they have in Manila that they don't have anywhere else. else. You know, like in the smaller cities, you may not find them, but they have them here, right? But there's one thing that I know that they do have, like in the Visayas, right? And that's buko pie, you know. And I had it for the first time, and it was good. And they even had it at the Jollibee down in Bacolod, which they don't have it. It's on the menu, you know, like in Manila, but they never have it. Or, you know, so far I've never seen them have it because they just don't have that stuff here. You know, like even in the stores, you're not going to find it. That's sort of a something that's more prevalent in the Visayas and possibly Mindanao, but I'm not sure because I've never been to Mindanao. But I know it's Dumaguete has them, but Bacolod has them, right? Buko pie. And but then what they do have here in the stores, in the grocery stores, at least in Manila, is what they call egg pie. And it's kind of like a custard. It's like a custard, you know, sort of a pie. It's pretty good. It really is. You know, not quite as good as buko pie in my opinion, but it's pretty good. You know. Now, can you get buko pie in Manila? Like if you order, yeah, maybe if you order it on Shopee or something or whatever. I haven't tried, but you know, you can get stuff. You know what I mean? You might have to wait a week to get it, or you know, whatever. They're shipping it from another town. You know, or there might be some specialty bakeries that get stuff like that. You know, yeah, but it's not. You're not going to find it in the grocery stores, and you're not going to find it like at probably at Jollibee. You know. And stuff like that. So I guess that's another little thing I left out of my last video. Um, Now, oh yeah, you know what? When you're walking, well, I'll touch on this. I already talked about driving, but just remember to drive defensively. You know what I mean? Like, which you should do no matter where you're driving. I don't care if you're driving in the U.S., Europe, anywhere. You really should drive defensively, you know, which means you're watching what the other guy's doing. You're not just like, you know, I'm just going to go and they're going to have to get out of my way. You know, that's driving offensively. And that's going to wind you up in the hospital, you know, or the morgue, you know. So drive defensively. And you know what? Guess what? Sometimes when you're walking here, you almost have to walk defensively. Like, and what I mean by that is like in crowds, you know, like in Manila, man, there's a lot of people, you know. And we do a lot of walking, you know, and stuff. We're walking distance to the mall and other places. And when you're walking here, don't just think that like, oh yeah, they'll get out of my way. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you get people coming. You know, there's no like right lane, left lane when you're walking, really. You know what I mean? And there's so just you might have to move out of people's way a lot. You know what I mean? Like when you're walking, because they're not gonna necessarily you know, you know what I mean? Like I mean, they probably won't collide with you, but I mean, you don't want to wait till the last second and then like, oh, somebody's got to move. Like it's almost like playing chicken, you know, when you're walking or whatever. So I find myself just kind of like, you know, I'll move and I'll put my arm back so I don't bump into people, and because I'm kind of a stocky guy, you know, and I don't want to be like bumping into people left and right because then they'll think you did it on purpose and whatever, you know, which I wouldn't, but you know. So I guess I call it defensive walking. You know, I do it. So you know, what are you? I guess you could do what you want, but you know, like I said, don't come crying to me, man, if something ends bad. You know. Um, and I think that okay. So the only thing about money, there's okay, banking. Personally, I don't have a bank account here. Now, I am working on my SRV, military courtesy visa. So I will ultimately have some money into one of their national banks. But I mean, it's not going to be an active account. I mean, it's going to be like money's going to be in there. It's going to be sitting in there. And the only way that I'll be able to use that money is if I want to buy a condo or a house or something or a piece of land or, you know, with my wife or whatever. That's the only way that money's coming out of that bank. You know what I mean? So that's not really banking. You know, I don't consider that banking. But as far as regular banking goes, hey, I use the ATMs here, but guess what? I have a Charles Schwab account, you know, so you can use ATMs, you know, like internationally, and they waive the fees. You know, normally there's almost like a $5 fee on every time you would use If you use like your regular debit card or something, try to use your regular U.S. bank debit card in an ATM over here, yeah, there's going to be like a $5 fee every time you use it. But with Schwab, they waive those fees, you know. So it's a very good bank, by the way. And they have a brokerage section too. You know, they're like you could get a brokerage account and a bank account, checking or savings, and you can get a debit with a savings. You know, most people think of debit, they think of checking accounts. Well, you can get one with your savings too with them. Okay, I like them. Excellent customer service. You know, whenever I've had to call them on the phone, even from here, you know, I've always had my issue resolved or whatever my question was resolved quickly and very they're very good. You know what I mean? Very friendly, very knowledgeable. So anyway, it's just my opinion or whatever. You know, I mean, but yeah, that's what I use. Now, do I have anything else? Sure, I do. I have Western Union account, which if I had to, I could send myself money, or I could just send my girlfriend money. Well, I call her. Sometimes you'll hear me say girlfriend, wife, because it's almost interchangeable here. I mean, we were LDR for a long time, but I mean, we've been together before, and we've basically been together for like what 4 years now. So over here, especially when you're living with somebody, it's like they'll say your wife, like a Filipino will say, "Oh, you and your wife," and don't correct them. Like don't say, "Oh no, it's just my girlfriend." Just that's the way it is here. When you're solid with somebody, it's like your wife and husband. Even if you're not technically married. Okay, just for you guys out there, maybe don't know that. So sometimes I'll use both terms. I'll say my wife or my girlfriend, but it's the same woman. And anyway, so I will say I also have a MoneyGram account, which I haven't used yet, but I have it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a backup. It's similar to Western Union. And with those companies, you're going to have a fee, a transaction fee, you know, anywhere from like whatever, like $10, let's say, usually. And also, they make their money because the exchange rate that you're going to get is not going to be what the actual exchange rate is. Like, for example, now the exchange rate is almost 56 pesos per dollar, US dollar. But if you send money Western Union, your rate's going to be like 54 probably. It's going to be at least 2 pesos less than what the actual rate is. Okay, so keep that in mind. You know, but it's pretty quick and pretty or it's easy to use, and I mean I've used it a lot in the past. Western Union. I never used MoneyGram. And then but that's kind of what I do right there. Now there's TransferWise and Zoom and all these other ways to transfer money. I've never used them. I'm sure some of them are great, but I just never used them. Never had occasion to have to use them or whatever. I think I've got enough bases covered, you know what I mean, with that, like a backup or whatever. Um, and then, you know what? I think I'm almost winding down here, so hopefully you guys are still awake. Hey, no, I'm just kidding. Snap out of it. What else do I got? Gcash. Gcash is almost like a gift card. I mean, it's almost like a debit card, but that you can load up, which I guess you could do with a debit card because every time you put money in your bank account, it's going to tally up your debit card limit, right? But Gcash is something that's used a lot here. Um, and you could even load your phone directly from Gcash, like when you have a Filipino phone and you have to load your SIM card up, you can do it from Gcash, which makes it convenient. And it's I don't have Gcash personally yet, although I might get it, but my wife's got it. And, so we pay bills, we pay some bills with it and stuff. And it's pretty convenient, you know. Um, so that's something that's big here. Like I said, it's just something that you put money in. It's kind of like a debit card, but it's not a bank account. It's not like all the hassle of setting up a bank account. So it's It's almost like a what you would call like almost like how gift cards you can kind of load them up sometimes or whatever, and then use them, except you can use Gcash in a lot of places, so it's much better than any kind of gift card you would get in the U.S. It's more like a debit card actually, without the hassles of setting up a bank account. How's that? That's why it's so popular here, you know. Because the banking here, it's not as online as maybe what you might be used to in the US, right? Like doing everything online and paying your bills online. It can be done here, but it's just not done by a lot of people, like, especially like a lot of locals. So if you have to go to a bank for whatever reason, even if you don't have an account. One time I changed money at a bank, it took like an hour. I was standing in line I was there for an hour just changing money. This was like one of my earlier trips, like maybe my third trip here or something like that. I forget what it was, but I just did it once. You know what I mean? I never did that again. They do have money changers here. They have small money changers that I saw like when I was in Cebu on my first time in Cebu, which, but they've got them at the department stores and they've got them outside of the grocery stores. Sometimes there'll be a whole desk where you can pay bills or you can change money, and you'll get the rate. You'll get the exact, whatever the exchange rate is. So those are really good. And even in Manila Airport, it's a good place to change money because you'll get the rate. It's not bad. You know what I mean? It's not bad to use. I would recommend it. If you got time or whatever, if you're not stressed out from the travel too much, and you don't mind waiting a little bit longer, just to get it done before you leave the airport or whatever, it's not a bad idea. I will say, what else am I gonna say about something about? Oh yeah, and generally, right, when you exchange money, they do want to see like $100 bills, preferably, or 50s. They'll take 50s if they're clean and crisp. But guess what? In Manila, and I can't speak for the rest of the Philippines, but in Manila, in the department store, not the grocery store, not the regular money changing place, but within the department store at SM, there was a money changer, and they took small bills. I had some because I was like, wow, I found out that they'll do it. And so I told my wife, I said, hey man, I got like, when I came here from the US, in June, I had like $65 or something, right? 60, it left in small bill, like in 20s, 10s, 5s, whatever. And I was like, and I thought I was going to get stuck with it. I'm thinking they're going to be able to change that here. And I found out they will, in the department store. And they did. So it was excellent. You know what I mean? I think it was almost $70, but so you'll hear a lot of expats say, "Oh no, it's got to be hundreds and that's it." But they've taken 50s. I've done 50s, and I'm not talking about in that same department store. I'm talking about money changers, even in Cebu or whatever, like in previous trips. So they'll take crisp 50s, whatever, and but they're also, of course, hundreds are preferable. And you don't always have to write the serial numbers down. I remember one time I had to write the serial numbers, or they were writing the serial numbers down or something. I was like, Jesus, you guys are really concerned with like whatever. um, but anyway, just so you know, that is an option here in Manila. Like I said, I wouldn't advise it if you're in some small city. Just use $100 bills or whatever. Don't take a chance on small bills or even 50s if you don't have to. You know. And one last thing I want to talk about. I've talked way too long, but this will probably be about a 45-minute video. The internet. Now, and I'm not going to talk about, the basic internet here is pretty good. Sky, we have Sky, cable and internet, and it's really good. I mean, there's very few outages. Sometimes you have to reset the router box, and stuff like that, which you have to do in the US too. I had Xfinity for several years, and I had to do that fairly frequently, not, you know what I mean? Like, and so anyway, it's not bad here. Globe, it depends on what area you're in, right? If you're in kind of a smaller area, provincial area, it might be a little not so great, you know what I mean? But if you're in a city, you probably will be okay with those, like smaller Globe or whatever. But I like Sky though. I mean, so they've been pretty good, you know. And I think we're paying like $50, the equivalent of about $50. You know, it's probably less than that with the exchange rate, $45 a month. And we have cable too. Not every channel, you know, you got one HBO channel, and you got, you know, it's kind of sporadic, but mostly you're paying for the internet, you know, and that's not bad. You know, you got two boxes for the internet and one cable box for the TV, so you know, it's not bad. But I was going to mention real quick about Starlink, right? Because everybody's like, ooh, you know, this Elon Musk, you know, Starlink, ooh, it's going to come to the Philippines. I tell you what, man, I mean, from what I know about it, it's satellite. It's 100 and some bucks a month. Okay. So yeah, if it gets down to $50 a month, then have at it. Okay. But right now, you're talking about over $100 a month. You think people in the Philippines are going to want to pay that? They're already paying, you know, anywhere from like $30 to $50 a month, which is a lot of money. You know, um, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's that. I wouldn't get that excited about it. You know. And guess what? It's satellite. So what does that mean? What's going to happen during the rainy season here in the Philippines? When it's overcast, when it's cloudy, when it's raining, when you have storms, typhoons. You think that's not going to affect your service with Starlink? Hey, I'm not an expert. Maybe you guys can comment. If I'm wrong, you let me know. In fact, I wish you would comment and like and subscribe. You know, just let me know that you're watching this. You know, I'm not trying to build this channel. You know, I'm getting not. You know, I'm trying to build up my subscriber base too. You know, I want to help. You know, as many people as possible out there. You know, and I don't mind getting feedback. You know what I mean? So, like I said, don't hesitate to comment. And that's it, guys. I'm done. I know I talked your ear off here, or your eyes off too, right? It's on video. Um, that's it. I hope you guys have a great day and a great weekend. It's Friday here in the Philippines in the afternoon. So I'll see you guys later. I'll see you on the next video.